The defendants also claim they are above the law insofar as to any decision made by the city, and no claim for breach of trust merits judicial review, including the lease of over 19 acres of prime public parkland in historical Jackson Park for $10. That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, wow.
Pretty good lease deal. 19 acres of prime parkland in Jackson Park for $10. Transfer of historic Jackson Park to the Obama Foundation, thereby wrecking the park's entire roadwork system and desecrating the historical integrity of Frederick Law Olmsted's master plan. The district, in so doing, the district court has gutted the rules of civil procedure, ignored the rules against delegating legislative decisions to private interested parties, and the brief filed by Professor Richard Epstein on behalf of Protect the Parks goes on along those lines, which is the whole story here, it seems to me, is that there is one set of rules for everybody else and another set of rules for Obama. That probably doesn't come as a surprise, generally speaking, but when it comes to public land, prime public parkland, as was described, that is an interesting precedent that's being set. And golly gee, one wonders what the fight over the possibility of a new Bear Stadium on the lakefront might look like if it were to come. Professor Richard Epstein is the James Parr Hall Distinguished Service Professor Emeritus of Law, Senior Lecturer at the University of Chicago. Professor Epstein, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's always happy to come here, even if the topic is a bit of a grip.
Well, so, this is a long-running saga, of course, and the Obama Foundation folks are proceeding ahead as if there is no concern about the law or the financing of their project, interestingly, as well, which is another topic we've discussed in terms of what they promised, where they promised they'd be in terms of the financing and where they actually are. But sort of just give us the stop, look, and listen at where the case stands and what you think the prospects are that anything is going to change.
Well, I'm not optimistic about all this, and I think the word stop is perfectly operative. I've been involved with the case roughly since the summer of 2019, and the procedural and substantive obstacles that we have faced have been unbelievable. Right now, the case is sitting before the Seventh Circuit in an oral argument that I made on October 24th of last year. It's a little bit more than 5 months, and they've not issued an opinion. And we raised three sorts of challenges, all of which I think are kind of decisive. And let me sort of be simple. First of all, you mentioned the 99-year lease. You misspoke. They changed the word of lease to use. And they did that because a 99-year lease would be subject to a public trust doctrine. And they thought if they reworked the language, they'd be able to get away from that. And by God, that's exactly what Judge Blakey did. He said, "You
even
want to
better.
Use magic words? Please be my guest." And so we're trying to fight that. Of course, a rose is a rose by any other name, and they have exclusive possession for 99 years, as any other tenant would have. But so far, they've been able to escape that charge. The $10 fee is not for the lifetime use, but it's only for 99 years, right? So you give them back 3 cents. That's the first thing about that. Then they have to finance the thing and so forth. And what the contracts say is we may be giving you the land, but we're not giving you all the work for the building. And so they had to meet strict financial targets. And there were two of these targets. One of them is they had to put enough reserve aside to build the building. And the other one was that they had to put enough reserves aside to create an endowment in order to keep the thing going. Well, they've done neither, but nobody seems to mind. So in 2021, they reported, well, we're ready to build this building. We have $485 million in assets, and this building is only going to cost us $482 million, unaudited. And those numbers are very fishy. Then by the time you got a little bit further along, even that was a pretense, because now the cost of the building in the summer of 21 went up to about $700 million by their auditing. The current figure is about $800 million by their auditing. My guess is it's probably higher than that. but they never did the second financing that you had to do in order to close the project. They just closed it and ignored the rules. So they're obviously in breach of their contracts because these were strict condition precedents. When I was asked by Judge Hamilton, isn't there a good faith waiver for that? I said, only if you want to do all contract law for the last 1,000 years. The rule in this case.
Well, that doesn't seem like a big deal. Yeah,
Well,
just undo contract law for 1,000 years. That's not a big deal.
No, I mean, go back to Roman time. They had a remedy, which is after contract has been disregarded in every respect. What they said is if you can't close on this day, you can defer closing without a penalty, and when you get the money, then you could start building. Well, they didn't do the second order. They closed on the 18th, and on the 21st of August in 2021, they knocked down 300 or so trees. They have promised to rebuild the Women's Garden, one of the things that was desecrated. There is no timetable as to when it will be done. There is no budget that's been put together. There are no plans that have been developed. It's a bare promise, which is worth the paper it isn't written on. And so you get things. So you get those two things. So you get the public trust doctrine, which is a steal, and there are hundreds of millions of dollars that the city and the federal government are putting in. And then what you do is you get this fake arrangement in which what they do is they claim that they're entitled to get the conveyance. Since that time, they've not raised much money towards this project. They reported last year a $331 million gift. Well, that sounds pretty impressive until you break it down. But a large portion of that was dedicated to other projects, about $125 million. And then there was another gift which was not dedicated to the building, but could be used to pay their annual expenses, which between fees and outside things and salaries and the like is close to $80 million a year. They run a very rich operation. They got only about $120 million or something like that in new money, and the sources of funding are drying up. And their commitments continue to get enlarged. We try to get an audit on this, and we filed a paper with Judge Blakey on, I think it was January 5th, 2022. And by January 6th, he said, "You're out of court, young man." Why? He says, because you're pleading as a third-party beneficiary. The first line of our brief was, this is not a third-party beneficiary case. This is a breach of trust case. A third-party beneficiary, for people who don't know this bit of legal lingo, is A and B enter into a contract to purport a benefit to C. And the question is whether C can sue to get that benefit. And most people want to reserve the right to alter the contract before repayment or payment is made. And so what happened is they deny enforceability, even if the law would normally allow it. And we knew that when we filed our papers, but you can't breach a fiduciary duty by saying nobody could bring a third-party action. And what this did, by the way, is it slowed us up to close to 2 years in bringing the appellate case, and we still have yet to get a look at the books, having made a complaint that these guys are completely insolvent relative to what they've done. You know that ex-President Obama prides himself on transparency, right?
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
I mean, I got to tell you, I mean, this is buried in so many deep crypts. Nobody has even seen the internal plans of how this thing is going to operate. What they do is they simply maintain a wall of silence in the press. And if you look at their annual report, it's so sketchy as to be embarrassing on the finances. In 2021, when they thought they actually could make the money, they said, well, we know we're behind the eight ball, but we could raise $300 million a year in order to capture this thing by 2025 when it was supposed to open. But that was a pipe dream, and it was illegal anyhow. They have to have the money in hand. You're not allowed to build buildings on the promise that you'll be able to raise the money for it, and they have gotten that away with that. And so when I get into the Seventh Circuit, it's all wonderland on those two things. Well, then there's the environmental claims and so forth, the NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act claim, the disclosures you have to make in order to keep this thing going, right? Well, what happens is they started with the prospect that they were going to build. This was the project. They were going to build a presidential center in Jackson Park. They told you where it was going to go, and you had to close down a bunch of roads in order to do this and expand other roads. So it's a transportation project, and you had to go through all of this. So we spent about 18 months going through all of this, starting in 2019. And then in early 2022, they said, oh, that's not what the project is. We're not building a residential center in Jackson Park. How silly can you be? What we are doing is we're just widening two roads and closing a third. And they said they could close the third road, i.e. Cornell Drive, without getting government approval, which is just flatly wrong. And then they said, well, since the only thing we're doing is widening the road, the fact that these guys, i.e. the plaintiffs, have presented a plan to build a much superior operation west of the Washington Park on private land, well, that really doesn't matter anymore because we changed the definition. Well, that's just flatly illegal in the way in which you run things. And then, well, you have to figure out what's going on. And Judge Wood made the following deduction, which I will leave you to decide. She said, well, we cut down, large numbers of trees with 30-inch diameters in their base, but we're going to replace them one-to-one. So by 10 years from now, by the time this building is finished, we will plant saplings of 2 to 4 inches. And she says, but don't worry. There are lots of other trees in Jackson Park where the birds can nest and so forth. Well, there's never been a single case underneath where you could chalk down trees and say, well, there are a lot more trees in the universe. I mean, to talk about it, it's kind of like a joke to see that. But that's what's happened. And it's just in the long run, it's going to be just fine.
Well, let me tell you.
I'm too painful.
Let me tell you something. If you're not careful, you're not going to be invited to shoot hoops with Obama and Giannoulias. I'm just warning you.
Well, I've done it once. He's a good basketball player. I wish he'd stick to that trade.
Well, so it was supposed to open in 2025. Is there any
2026? Well, it's
2026. Yeah.
Well, you understand, most of these centers are built on humane scale. Many people say, it's a presidential library. No such luck. It was sold as one in 2015, early on. But the requirements to build them mean that you can't build it over 70 feet high. And this tower is about 235 feet. And it's the worst kind of architecture. If you look at it, it looks like a battlement. And what you're doing is saying, well, where do they keep the guns that they can fire in the lake in case somebody wants to invade? It's just much too massive to the place, and it completely dominates the skyline. But it sits like a sick cancer over everything that's going on.
I haven't seen the updated plans, but I hope there is like some sort of like version of Christ the Redeemer outside of Rio, but it's Obama outside of Chicago. Is that part of the development? Because I think that would be a nice touch for the lakefront.
I think there should be a statue of one kind or another. What they do is they have some saying that he wrote, and they put it on the top of the building as if you could read it. And so what it does is it looks like this weird kind of mosaic for no particular reason of what's going on. Look, we cannot oppose this on aesthetic grounds if you're going into the court. But it's certainly on aesthetic grounds you could start to look at it and to realize it's just much too massive, and they're closing roads so they can move it further north so that everybody can see it from both ends of the Midway and along the lakefront, a citadel of the good man sitting out there. I mean, this is, in fact, a very sad situation. And so why does one fight it? I mean, I don't know whether we'll get any luck in the Seventh Circuit this time. We've not gotten a single ruling in our favor in the 4.5 years that I've been. And every ruling, starting from the worst one that Judge Amy Barrett, now Justice Amy Barrett, did, they've all been just, I think, indefensible on every legal ground of which I'm aware. You said that they're playing by two different rules. You're wrong. There's one set of rules for everybody else, and there's no set of rules. Rules
right.
For dealing with the Obama Foundation. I mean, it's clout of the kind of order. And, he's a genius at keeping the publicity down. And so what do you see about Obama? You see him looking at the plans with adoring eyes. You see him looking at the lakefront arm in arm with her. And you see him wearing a construction hat turning dirt over. That's what they do. How many times have you asked him to come on the show?
Oh yeah,
that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
so,
right.
I wanted to ask you about
right?
Well, are you guys going to get involved? Is your organization going to get involved with a potential new Bears stadium along the lakefront?
Well, let me put it to this way. Somebody else will have to take that one on. When you talk about this, we sound very impressive, protect our parks, but we're a very tiny organization. The Bear Stadium, I don't even know what the plans are. I think it sounds to me quite lunatic for a whole variety of reasons. Namely, the appropriate place for a Bear Stadium is by White Sox Stadium, where they can share common facilities at different times of the year. Many years ago, in 2003, I worked on this particular with Michael Rackless, who's working with me on this case. And we tried desperately to see if we could stop the renovation of the old Soldier Field, which was a massive desecration of the stadium. And it was a much simpler case than this one. But we got tossed out of court with strong warnings, don't you ever do this again. But we actually prepared, as we did in this case. We had a very fine architectural firm prepare a dome stadium that would be by, not by Soldier Field, but by the White Sox Stadium, where you could take access of a real good freeway system in order to get it. Access along the Lakeshore Drive to any major facility is very difficult because when you buy a lakefront, you don't have easy access on a cross grid. So where we wanted to build the thing in Washington Park, you got the red line, you got the green line, you have Martin Luther King Drive, you got Garfield Road, and you got the freeway. Everyone can get in there. There's only one way to get into the Obama Presidential Center, and that's in a cul-de-sac. And then you have to turn around, and there's only one entrance that you have to use for security, for deliveries, for employees, and for customers. So the building itself is absolutely crazy. So
Well,
we thought
it's
very sad, but that should be built not on the lakefront, that's for sure.
That's going to be like Hotel California. You can enter, but you can never leave. The Obama Library. Richard Epstein, James Parker Hall, Distinguished Service Professor, Emeritus of Law, Senior Lecturer, University of Chicago. Professor Epstein, thank you for your yeoman-like effort with respect to and protect our parks with your yeoman-like effort against the library. Good luck. Appreciate it.
Okay, it's not a library, remember.
No, it's a wonderland. It's
Obama land, yeah.
Yeah, right.
They took the name off because they couldn't build a library given regulations. It's all a con.
It's all a con. That should be the name of it.
Conland.
That should be it's all a con. I like that.
All right. Thank you so much. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to podcasts of Dan and Amy from the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Bad decisions limit future options. Make enough bad decisions and you'll destroy your life. Listen to The Flot Line with Rick Hughes this Sunday morning at 7. The Flot Line describes a main line of resistance in your soul built on God's Word. Listen this Sunday for inspiration, motivation, education, all without manipulation. That's The Flot Line with Rick Hughes.